Raise your hand if you had something you really enjoyed to do, like a hobby, that you ended up abandoning, not enjoying anymore, or doing only in secret. Now keep your hand raised. Keep it. Keep your hand raised if this change of heart came from an experience of failure or harsh judgment from yourself or another person. Now keep your hand raised if the feelings that were once triggered of joy and flow are now replaced by fears of worry and inadequacy. Well, quite few people. I feel home here. To everyone who kept their hands raised until the end, welcome to the family of very anxious people. It's not nice in here. And this is a repetitive experience for people with anxiety, this loss of interest, of positive feelings about things they once enjoyed, and they got replaced by feelings of nervousness and sometimes guilt. And this replacement in going from positive to negative doesn't only come at the cost of the once upon a time interest being lost, but also with a great burden of fear to overcome when they want to try something new, or when they start enjoying something new. And if you're one of those people, you'd look at other people that seem to have absolutely no difficulty jumping from interests and projects and opportunities, and you wonder, if only I could crack the code, become one of these people that feel the fear and do it anyway. Great book, by the way, you should check it out. When I was a child, I was not afraid of very many things. Big insects in the house? I was your girl. You tried to bully me or someone in front of me. Didn't matter how big you were, you are sure to be taught a lesson. And it took literally anyone to insinuate I couldn't do something for me to try my hardest. I liked challenges, and I rather seeked them, because the feeling of going beyond the limits of my comfort zone was exciting. I liked the feeling of growing stronger. All of that, however, is a far cry from the person I am today. Throughout the course of my life, I developed a very well-established anxiety regimen. And things I am scared of now include waking up in the morning before my alarm rings, opening up my computer, checking my messages, making a call. And this list of fears grows so exponentially big that for a while I was afraid of life. Existing was very scary to me. And for a time, I didn't really live. And I almost converted my status from alive to no longer. One of the reasons I'm still here today is that I understood what high-functioning anxiety is, and I developed few mechanisms to cope with it. Today, I'd like to share with you a recipe that helped me avoid the slippery slope of self-destruction, and that even gave me the strength to take on opportunities at the lowest moments of my mental health. And I would hope it can be helpful for you too. This recipe has one main ingredient, which is a redefinition of fear. And 5 easy to say, very hard to do steps. Fear is usually regarded as a weakness that we should battle. But I think there is great benefit in considering it a guiding compass for our actions and decisions rather than an enemy to defeat. You already probably know this, but the human brain doesn't really differentiate between good and bad risks. Challenges for the brain are always full of struggle, uncertain, and scary. And when there is a challenge in front of you, the brain has to choose between struggling and not struggling. And ultimately, it will choose not struggling. That is why we procrastinate very important tasks, and we feel this overwhelming suffocation when we try to solve them. Choosing easy and predictable is why we are alive today. It evolutionarily makes sense. But choosing hard and unpredictable is why we have every innovation and advancement we enjoy today. Fear is triggered as a protection mechanism, and it is made to protect us against risks. But it also protects us against opportunities of growth. And it does that by firing the same fight and flight response when it detects those opportunities. I'll say it again. Being afraid of doing something is your primer alert signal that you are going to grow doing that thing. And that is why it should be your guiding compass. Because when it fires, it means you're about to do something new, unconventional, brave, and probably amazing. But how can we make fear an efficient compass? Here comes the 5 helpers, very easy to say and very hard to do. And the first one, don't become fearless. You usually would hear that successful, innovative people are fearless. It's something that is celebrated. They sprint right ahead into action and never for once do they hesitate or look back. The success stories you hear are usually built in the same structure of a fairy tale. There's always a dragon and a brave prince to slay the dragon. And they are made that way to incite excitement and amazement in people. But if you really go to these successful people, the same people you look up to in your field, these innovative, awesome, bold people, they will tell you that their fears never actually go away. They're still there. And they feel them. They work with them. Becoming fearless is honestly motivational bollocks. If you are fearless, it means there is nothing you can lose. And if there is nothing to lose, it means that you are on survival mode. And I hope that you are not living in survival mode every day of your life. What becoming fearless really does, or wanting to become fearless really does, is that it creates an imposter syndrome. Because if you tell yourself, I need to be bold and just do it, what you're actually telling yourself is that there is something wrong with you. That's why you're afraid. And when you are looking for something wrong, it's very easy for your brain to detect plenty. The easiest being, you're not ready. You're not good enough. There's someone here who will do it better than you. And that leads very quickly to an inflated perception of the task and a deflated perception of your abilities. And you've got more fear instead of less. What your innovative, successful people that you look up to would probably tell you is that the willpower of fighting your fears all the time is a very rare resource and it depletes very easily. And instead of battling your fears, they probably tell you to breathe your way through the panic. The good news is that you already know how to do this. You've done it once when you were frustrated and angry, but wanted to forbid yourself from taking an action that you will regret later. You already know. But for the sake of it, let's do it one more time. When you find yourself in a state of panic, take a big breath. Tense all the muscles in your body and hold. 1, 2, 3. Release. And with the release of your breath, release all the muscles you've been tensing. Do this 3 times, or how many times you need, and it will help you calm your response to stress. Panic is a response, but it overwhelms all the other senses. And that's why getting rid of the panic is very important. But getting rid of the fear is not. Listening to the fear is important. With compassion, just an added challenge. And it follows the same exact principle as having a very calm talk with a loved one after a very heated fight. Once you're both calm, things become clearer. And one of these clarities that you may notice when you listen to your fear is that not every anxiety means that the risk is real. And not every evidence of a similar situation being risky in the past holds true now. For example, why the hell would I do a TED talk while I suffer from high-functioning anxiety? Masochist decision, isn't it? And I think a lot of you can relate to this feeling of freak out of perfectionism when an opportunity becomes a reality. But if we really evaluate the risk I am taking here, now, standing in front of you, how big really is it? Is it big enough for me to have panic attacks over months? Not really, right? Even if this talk goes horribly wrong. Maybe. What my anxiety really was telling me, and what it tells all of us, is that something is way too important for us to lose focus on. I was anxious because holding this talk was significant to me. It is the same exact importance when we are afraid for our lives, when we're really anxious before a date with someone we really like, or before doing a TED talk and about a mental illness that you had for a long time and you wish that somebody could have some help with your talk or maybe just feel less alone. And that tells me that I should do it more often, not less. Now, once I understood that, fine, good, but I was still stuck within endless loops of avoidance. And if you find yourself in this situation, the next one is for you. Equally unintuitive, premeditate the evil. And it comes from Stoic philosophy. Premeditating the evil is basically describing your fears in the worst case scenarios that could ever happen in great detail. Crazy. But defining them in great detail takes some of the uncertainty away. The known is always less scary than the unknown, no matter how bad the known is. In taking that uncertainty away reduces the fear. But there is also a strategy of doing that. And for that, I will borrow the strategy of fear setting from Tim Ferriss. It's the same as goal setting, but for your fears. And I can summarize it in 4 questions. What if I? So what's the worst case scenario if I do the thing? What's the worst case scenario of me doing this TED talk? Then what can I do to prevent this worst case scenario from happening or to repair the damages if it ever happens? And usually, you'd find plenty of ways to prevent the worst case scenario from happening, and that doesn't include having anxiety instead of preparing your talk. And you'll always also find someone you can contact to help you, even if they happen. Then the next question is, what are the benefits if I do the thing? What's the benefit of me doing this TED talk, other than free therapy? And the last one, and the most important one, is what is the cost if I do nothing, if I don't do this? And usually, if it is the right task, you'd find that the cost of doing nothing outweighs the results of worst-case scenarios, even if they happen. And remember, for your worst-case scenarios, 40% of what you worry about will never happen. And 30% of them already happened in the past, and there is nothing you can do about it. So most of your worries are already taken care of. But this exercise can also shift the fear from doing the thing to not doing anything. And with that comes the motivation of doing something. Take that motivation and take the smallest action you can towards your task, because an action, as small as it is, turns helplessness into power. And with that momentum you build, take more action. Now, the last one is not really a strategy to cope with your anxiety when it happens, to lower it, but to lower your anxiety in general, which is healing from your inner judge. That same inner judge that tells you, that always contrasts your efforts with the biggest, most successful people in the field you're trying for the first time. You know what I'm talking about. And this sense of contrasting the good in other people's lives and the bad in ours comes from two things. The first is the binary system with which we work, contrasting everything to its opposite. So when people think of mental illness, they think of, well, a depressed person is always sad, an anxious person is always scared. And when they think of success, they think of none of these. And it's always a contrast. And that contrast gives the second reason, which is our inability to empathize with invisible struggle. And that goes true for ourselves or for other people. I am on the outside the biggest overachiever you can know. I graduated with honors, I held a job right after, I traveled and lived in many countries, yada yada, everything is on a silver plate. But inside, I actually suffer from a condition that makes my muscles hurt all the time. They hurt right now. And I suffered from 15 years of depression in 3 years of suicidal, failed mostly, attempts. And what I understood from getting to that point is my fear of life and how big it was. And for the first time, I empathized with it. And what I can tell you from that point of wanting to take my own life is that fear of life is very real for a lot of people, and sometimes it's bigger than the fear of death. And also, living a life that is not according to your truth, living a life that is not like the one you want for yourself, is not worth it. When death comes to you and you're not the one anticipating it and you can do nothing about it, laying in your deathbed, regretting the life you lived is not worth it. Ask your fears, they will tell you. Thank you.